Global supply chains have faced unprecedented disruptions over the past 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Concerns about national security, economic stability, technological superiority are driving governments to take a greater interest in mapping and regulating global supply chains. And while that will inevitably lead to some onshoring or so-called friendshoring of certain industries, it won't change the fundamentally interconnected global nature of supply chains for most products. Geographic diversity, manufacturing capability, and environmental sustainability are all critical and much discussed aspects of building reliable, resilient supply chains. So is respect for human rights. Projects that fail to engage local stakeholders face protests, delays, and even cancellations. Industries that rely on the exploitation of workers increasingly face import bans, reputational risk, and even legal liability, as we'll talk about today. Failing to respect worker rights also makes industries less productive. The report of President Biden's Supply Chain Task Force tellingly noted, decades of focusing on labor as a cost to be controlled and not an asset to be invested in have depressed real wages and driven down union density for workers while contributing to companies' challenges finding and keeping skilled talent. As governments build the next generation of sustainable supply chains, respect for human rights must be integrated into the business model.
It's been a long time in the making and almost failed, but now EU member countries have agreed to a law that will force companies to uphold environmental and human rights standards in their supply chains. The green light came only after major compromises on the original text were made.
Tin production at the company Chmun2024 in Germany. Here, efforts have been made for several years to trace the supply chain for the tin used. The company does this voluntarily. Due to the proposed law, many more companies in the EU will need to check if their supply chains use child labor or cause environmental damage, such as through deforestation. Though not as many companies are affected as initially planned. The original version aimed to include all companies that have more than 500 employees and an annual turnover of at least 150 million euros. Now, the proposed rules will only apply to EU companies with more than 1,000 staff and a turnover above 450 million euros. That would have meant around 20,000 companies would be forced to document the origin of everything they sold. Countries including Germany and Italy, which are home to many small and medium-sized companies, feared the original law would hit them unfairly. That number has fallen to under 6,000. Even so, the German Chamber of Commerce says the new law means a lot of red tape and would also make products more expensive for companies and consumers. The Worldwide Fund for Nature also opposes the compromise, but it says the EU has reduced the package to a shadow of its former self. The European Parliament will now have to give its approval to the changes to the legislation if it's to become law.
Well, the conflict in Ukraine and the sanctions on Russia have led to another surge in the cost of oil and gas. Traders are said to be struggling to sell Russian oil, even at a discount, because of difficulties in shipping and the payment process. Energy experts in the UK are warning that the cost of the average household dual fuel bill could rise by at least £700 by the time the new energy cap comes into force in the autumn. And further price rises at petrol stations are also expected.
We need to forge a new worldwide consensus on human rights, broadening its base of support and moving forward together in recognition that our survival depends on finding our way back to that common language. Our goal must be to promote and implement a 21st century human rights vision that is transformative, solution-oriented, unifying, and that speaks directly to every person's need for justice and search for meaning in life.